Hi, y'all. Welcome back to Samantha's Beauty Confessions. I'm going to be doing a solo episode today. And the stuff I'm going to be sharing with you was actually inspired by a conversation that I had with my mom over the weekend. We were talking about like life and, the different things that I've gone through and that she's gone through and just like all the mistakes that we've made, all the things we wish we would have done different. Maybe we wish we would have avoided altogether, whatever the case. And I was like, man, I really need to share this on a podcast. And so that's what we're going to do today. I have written down 5 lessons that I wish I knew sooner, that I wish I could go back in time and talk to the younger version of myself and tell that person, look, these 5 things, if you will just take them seriously now, you're going to avoid so many roadblocks and so much confusion and so much hurt and so much everything you want to avoid if you just listen and learn this now. And while we cannot do that, we can't go back in time, we can't change the past, all the things. What I can do is I can take my experiences and take the lessons that I've been able to learn the hard way and share them with you so that hopefully from this point forward, you will know these to be true and you will actually take it seriously and it will help you avoid the things that I wasn't able to. Okay. So I don't want to spend too much time on the intro. Let's go ahead and get into the episode. Lesson number 1 is you have plenty of time. You have so much time to figure things out and to do the things you want to do and to get to the places that you want to be. I promise you, you do. You do not have to rush the process. You don't have to have it all figured out by society's timeline or whatever the case is for you. Your life will work out exactly how it's supposed to. Okay. Do not waste your energy. Do not waste your time dwelling on what's not happening and, worrying about when it's going to or if it's going to or whatever. Because all that is going to do is it's going to drain your energy. And life is hard enough as it is. So we don't need anything else to drain energy from us? And whenever I think about this lesson, I think that for me, this kind of like hurry up mentality showed up in 2 different ways. So the first way was I often found myself, especially like in high school, I often found myself wishing I was older or wishing that I was currently in a position that I wasn't in yet. Like, for example, I couldn't wait to turn 16. Then I couldn't wait to turn 18, then 21, and you just like, I was constantly telling myself, oh my gosh, when I get 16 or when I turn 16, I'm going to do XYZ and life's going to be good and everything's going to be perfect. And then I got there and I was wishing for another age or another time or another event. And what ended up happening was I almost like wished my life away a little bit. It's kind of sad to admit, but it's true. And I never really enjoyed the moment I was in because I was so consumed with wishing I was somewhere else. Right. And whenever you do this, that is what ends up leading to regret because then you look back, 10 years later, 20 years later, and you're like, oh my gosh, that situation, that time in my life was such a pivotal time or like an important time, but I didn't even enjoy it because my head was elsewhere. My feet were not present in the moment. My mind was not present in the moment because it was constantly just wishing it was somewhere else. And the other way that this showed up for me is I thought I had to have everything figured out. I thought that there was no time to waste at any phase of my life and that, I needed to graduate high school. I needed to go to college. I needed to graduate college. I needed to get a job, find a husband, have babies, and just rinse and repeat, you know? And now that I'm 33 years old, I think back to that person and I'm like, oh my gosh, if she could see this version of me, like I knew I'd get emotional, but if she could see this version of me, I think the younger Samantha honestly at first would laugh, because she'd be like, wow, like you're 33 years old and you're not married and you've been divorced and you have no kids and all the things. But it's like this version of Samantha, the 33-year-old, I wish I could go back to the younger version of me and be like, hey, girlfriend, like chill out, you know, 33 is not old. even though you probably think it is right now, you still have so much life ahead of you. And so, what's the point in rushing the process, you know? So, really just knowing that like your life will work out the way it's supposed to. And it's okay if you don't follow the timeline that society has put on you or that you've put on yourself for whatever reason. And I think that there are two like main things that, for me personally at least, that caused me to feel like I needed to do specific things sooner than I probably should have. And the first one, to no one's surprise, is social media. You'll probably hear me mention this a lot today. And I'm not trying to be negative about it, but I do think that for me personally, it is the culprit of a lot of my problems, of a lot of my insecurities and all the things. But anyways, so as we're scrolling on social media, we're seeing we have like a front row seat to people's highlight reel. We're looking at the vacations they're going on. We're seeing the beautiful homes they're building. We're looking at their new baby and, whatever the case is, we're seeing everything that they want us to see. And when that happens, subconsciously, it can start to make us question, like, wow, I've lived in the same house for 10 years, or, I'm not married, or I don't have kids. And we start to panic, right? And when we start to panic, we actually do things a lot quicker than we're ready to. And this is what happened to me. So I remember being like 21, 22, maybe. At this time, I started seeing a lot of my friends on Facebook and Instagram were getting engaged. And they'd share those close-up ring photos, you know what I'm talking about? And they'd have photographers to take pictures of their engagement and all the stuff. And I'm not knocking any of that, but subconsciously what it was doing to me was it was making me feel, again, pressure. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I've got to hurry up and do this. Like I'm falling behind. And then I started dating my ex-husband, and I wanted to get engaged. I was so ready for that phase of my life. However, that phase of my life wasn't ready for me, And because I was so ready for it and I was so persistent on going to, taking the next step, look what ended up happening, Like now I'm sitting here and I've been divorced and I'm not married to that person because that person wasn't right for me. And that's what ends up happening when we try to force things into our life or try to do things just because we think we have to. Because the truth is, like, our life is going to work out exactly how it's supposed to. We don't have to make all of these edits and we don't have to, intervene in any way. It's going to all work out. We just have to be open-minded and we have to allow it to. So it's like that is the lesson to learn here, that when we try to change our life path and we try to control our situation, and when we try to rush the process because we think we're running out of time, we end up finding ourselves in a position that we almost have to like backtrack and kind of shift things around and rearrange our path and just like do the thing we could have done from the beginning and avoided all of it. And I wanted to give y'all some actionable steps here, just so that if you are finding yourself like me and feeling that pressure for whatever reason, I want you to know that a couple of things that you can do to help with this are, number one, try really, really hard to be present as much as possible. And I know that specifically my stepdad, if he's listening to this episode, he is rolling his eyes because I still need to work on this. I am so guilty of being on my phone in moments where I don't even need to be. It's just a habit, but at least I'm trying to get better. But that's the number one way to stop this, is to try to be present in the moment and just like enjoy what it is that you're doing currently. And don't stress so much about what hasn't happened yet, because literally within one split second, something could come up and it could change the foreseeable future for you. And so why do you want to waste time just like panicking about something that hasn't happened yet? And number two, when you do start to feel yourself thinking like, I've got to hurry up and do this because this person is, just remind yourself that your life is going to work out just as it's supposed to. And that no matter what you're telling yourself, I promise you there's plenty of time. The second thing that I wish I would have known sooner is that life is not fair. So whenever I was younger, I used to come to my mom and say things like, so-and-so got invited to this sleepover, but I didn't. And my mom would say, life's not fair. And I would say, my boyfriend broke up with me, but now he's dating my best friend. And my mom would say, don't worry about it. Life's not fair. And it's like, I heard that so many times when I was younger that it made me like angry to hear it every time she said it, because it's like, I know life isn't fair. Like logically, we all know that, this one specifically has been drilled into us since childhood, I'd imagine. And now as an adult, though, I sort of think of it a little bit differently, I'm no longer upset about things as little as like someone hanging out and not inviting me. What I find myself doing now as an adult, and what I think is more relatable as we get older, is when you see somebody online that is doing the thing that you want to do so bad, that you are trying so hard to get to the point that they're already at. And you start to tell yourself things like, I'll never get there, or, this person is so lucky, or I bet that their life is so amazing. But anytime that you find yourself doing that, I want you to stop yourself and just remember that that person has a whole life before the specific moment that you are, envious of or jealous of or whatever. And, while it may be nice to be in that person's shoes, you also have to take into consideration all the different things that it took for them to get to that moment. And if I'm guessing, I'm imagining that a lot of those things are not so great, are things that you wouldn't want to have to live through, are experiences that you wouldn't want to have to go through in order to get there. And so just remind yourself that there is enough good in the world for every single person. And although your best friend may have gotten the promotion that you wanted, or although you see someone that you went to high school with that married this person that takes them on all these luxurious vacations, and you find yourself in this current moment just doing everything you can to keep your head above water and working so hard every single day just to make ends meet, and you can't see the way out of the current situation that you're in. Just know that there is enough good out there for every single person. And kind of like what I mentioned earlier, your time will come. But I'm a firm believer that you get what you attract. And so if you are spending all of your energy and all of your emotions being jealous and envious and resentful of the people doing what you want to do, it's going to take you longer to get to that point. Whereas the opposite is also true. If you are showing up and supportive and, encouraging and just like a cheerleader for your friends and your family or whoever is experiencing these things, good is going to come back to you. Okay. Some of y'all may not believe in that, but I firmly believe that. So try to just, in this one, the actionable step would be to shift your mindset and just continue to tell yourself that although this sucks right now, although, this person is living my dream life, I have to believe that my time is coming, and it will. Trust me. The third lesson is one that took me a long time to figure out, and that is to ask for what you need. Okay. I used to think that people could literally read my mind, that I could, be with any single person and they would know exactly what I wanted just because they knew. And that's crazy, right? Like that is not logical. You can't read people's minds and people cannot read yours. So us expecting people to know what we need from them is insanity. Unspoken expectations are going to lead you to resentment. Okay. And resentment is honestly more destructive for you internally than it is for anybody else around you. Everybody else around you is just going to be like, well, I can't go around that person today because they're just miserable and negative. But inside of you, it's really eating away at your happiness and your joy and all the things that you're supposed to feel in life, because you're letting it like take over your entire being simply because you won't speak up. Right. And the way to get rid of that feeling is to say what you want, to voice what you want and need from others, okay? To speak out loud what you're holding in. And I'm not talking about like in a passive aggressive way, okay? You have to be direct here, because again, if you're just like really passive about it, most people aren't going to pick up on that. And I'm going to give an example here. I just chose something completely random, but say you're somebody who hates having dishes in your sink, right? Like it drives you crazy. It makes you want to peel your skin off. But your partner or whoever you live with or whatever, they are the opposite. They don't really mind dishes in the sink. And so, they'd let them pile to the top before they're ever going to put them in the dishwasher. But that is slowly making you more and more miserable every day, to the point that you start to resent the person who's leaving the dishes there. Okay. And a passive aggressive way of handling this would be like going into the kitchen and turning on the water in the sink and like rinsing the dishes out and slamming the dishes in the dishwasher, or like sighing really loud and, making these like statements of like, guess I'll do the dishes. All of these things are passive. Okay. What you need to do is you need to sit down with that person and tell them honestly and calmly, like you don't want to attack them at all, but just say, hey, it really bothers me when there are dishes in the sink. And I don't mind doing the dishes, like if we eat together in the evenings, but if you get a dish out and I'm not home, for example, could you please put it in the dishwasher? Or could you please wash it out and put it back in the cabinet? Whatever the case is. That is a direct way of saying it. And then it's up to that person to either try to change their behavior or to just completely ignore it. And if they completely ignore it, that's whenever you can make the decision, okay, I know that the dish thing is obviously like a small scale, but if it was a bigger scale, pretend, you could make the decision of like, is this person best for me or whatever? Okay. We can figure out what to do next later. But most people, if you approach them in a calm manner, are going to want to make you happy, especially if it's your partner, but they don't even know how to do that unless you tell them. Okay. And really, I think that this is why therapy works out so well in general, is because just getting something off of your chest finally is going to make your internal self feel so relieved. It's almost like this instant weight that's been lifted off of your shoulder because you finally said out loud everything that you've been feeling inside. And it's very refreshing to do that. Okay. So pay attention whenever you do have these conversations with people, like how much lighter you feel and how much better it actually is day to day for you. It's crazy how that works. Okay, and lesson number 4 is be your own person. So this is something I didn't learn until like a year ago, probably. Okay. I got so wrapped up, just like so many other people do, in doing things to fit in. I've done this my whole life. Like I've almost kind of adapted myself in a way to specific, circles I've been in because I wanted people to like me. And I thought that in order to get people to like me, I had to be whatever, they were. And now that I'm 33, I realize that the best way to get people to like you is simply to be yourself. Okay. You don't have to pretend to be interested in the things that other people are interested in. You don't have to pretend to want to do something just because everyone else is doing it. You can be exactly who you are and still have a big friend group or, a close circle of people that you interact with. Honestly, I think that you'll have a lot more people if you're being authentic to who you truly are. And you don't have to do what everybody else is doing just because you think you need to. And I know that this is easier said than done because oftentimes we find ourselves putting this label on us, or like putting ourselves in a box because social media or society or someone in life has told us we need to be there. And we just kind of think that if we get outside of that box, that it's wrong of us or, it's scary. And so we don't want to do anything different. But really, we live in a world where it's so easy to be labeled as something, right? Whether it's from social media or from society or our friends, family, whatever. It's so easy to just like jump on board with stuff and to just go to these social things because we think we need to in order to fit in, whether it's our job or our personal life, whatever. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with exposing yourself to different situations and just kind of like showing up a time or two and just like being a social human. But what ends up happening a lot, and what ended up happening to me, is that I got lost in all of that. Like I found myself saying yes to things that didn't really make me happy. And I found myself doing things that didn't really align with my like vision long term. And I know I've mentioned this before, but like when I was living out of alignment with who I really am, that is whenever I felt the most unhappy that I'd ever felt. Okay. I was in a moment of time where like I had all of these accomplishments and accolades and quote unquote success, right? But for some reason, I still felt empty. I felt emptier than I ever had before. And I truly believe at my core, it's because I wasn't being me. I had gotten so wrapped up in everybody else's version of Samantha that I lost who I really was. Okay. And honestly, you do not want to find yourself there. Being in this position leads to a big identity crisis. At least it did for me. And I don't want any of y'all to have to experience that. So if I could go back in time and talk to the younger me, I would make it a point to stress the importance of spending time by yourself. Not all the time, just giving yourself permission to be alone sometimes, because when we're alone, we're able to really channel our inner selves and we're able to really like think clearly. Because think about it, if you're never alone, you're always worrying about at least one other person and how they're feeling and if they're having fun and if they're ready to leave or whatever. And you're never really thinking of like your feelings and your values and all the things that you need to do in order to be authentically yourself. And the more I've gotten into human design lately, the more I realize how important alone time is for me. And what's crazy is that when I was younger, like my mom always says this, when I was younger, I never really was alone. I'm an only child and I always had friends over, always. Like the thought of being alone gave me so much anxiety when I was younger. But I wish I would have found my human design chart before. Who knows? I probably wouldn't have even thought it was cool then. But there's a small chance I would have. And then I would have realized how important it is on my chart specifically to have that alone time, because that's what allows me to really get creative and get clear on my visions and just dial in to me at my core and not listen to all the external noise that's going on so frequently these days, you know? But even if your human design chart is not like mine, I promise you that alone time is so important, because it's during this time that you'll be able to peel back all of the layers of you and really figure out who you are when all the labels from society, all the expectations have been removed and you're just purely yourself. Okay. And I also want to add here, just because I do think it's important, that we hear so much that we have to like, you know, find a specialty and niche down and do this and do that. But really and truly, like, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. And this is something that I've had to realize recently is like, I don't want to have this niche where it's just like one single thing, because I truly believe that I am very multi-passionate and that I have a lot of interests and a lot of things that I want to do and a lot of things that bring me joy. And, you know, I'm not going to allow society or anybody for that matter to tell me that I have to stay inside this box. Okay. I'm finally at 33 years old realizing like I can just be me. And if that means that I have 10 different hobbies in 10 different categories, or I want to specialize in 5 different things or whatever, so be it. You know, maybe I'm not going to find society's version of success that way, but I'll find my version of success that way, because I will be living my life the way that I want to live it. And anytime that you find yourself trying to be like other people, just remind yourself over and over until you fully believe it that that person you're trying to be like already exists. We don't need to have a million duplicates of whatever that person is, of whoever that person is. That person already exists. What the world needs is for you to be you. It's really that simple. And the last lesson I wish I would have known sooner is to be nice to people. Be kind for absolutely no reason. Not because someone did something for you or because somebody else was nice to you first or whatever. Just be a nice person because it's the right thing to do. And I know that you're probably like, well, yeah, but what if people are rude to me first? It's hard to be nice to those people. And trust me, I get it. Okay. Trust me when I tell you that I get it. But circling back to another thing my mom told me when I was younger is if I would come home and say, you know, hey, so and so did this today, or, you know, so and so acted this way to me and I was upset. My mom would say, that's not about you, that's about them. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I, again, got pissed. But now that I'm older, again, my mom is right in this situation as well. I feel like if I had $1 for every time I said that, I could retire by now, but it's true. She was right because we never know what people are going through in their personal life that's making them come across as angry or just like rude or whatever. And I myself have actually been in that situation. When I was, married to my ex-husband and things were like going south and I was just so unhappy and just lost in everything inside, that was coming across externally as well. Like the people that were in my life at that time, they were kind of getting the result of all of those feelings because I was just negative and mean and just like nothing was going to change that. But it wasn't about them. It was about me. It was about what I was dealing with that I wasn't brave enough to communicate to people at that point yet. And that I didn't even have like the capacity to even realize it in those moments. People just thought I was rude, but really that's not the case. I'm actually a very kind human. And I encourage all of you to be kind to people, even in the moments where they're not so kind to you. Because similarly to me, you never know what they're going through. And I know how hard it is to be nice to someone when they're just jerks to you. Trust me, I 100% know. But at the end of the day, you never know what someone's going through. You never know like what their current situation is. You don't know what happened to them just like minutes before you came in contact with them. And sometimes all it takes is just a kind gesture or asking them how their day's going or telling them that, you're thinking about them or something positive. It just takes that one instance to completely shift their mindset and pick them back up from whatever it is they're struggling with. I have an example I want to share of a situation that I've been through actually a few years ago where I was in a position that someone was not very pleasant, and we were able to turn it around simply by our actions. So, this was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, I guess. I was eating at a restaurant with a group of people. And when our waitress came out to take our drinks, she was just pissed. I mean, you could tell like her day could not have been any worse. She's like stomping her feet, like sighing. She's like, "What can I get y'all to drink?" Just like not pleasant. Okay. And I remember thinking in my head, like, well, shit, this is going to be miserable. Like maybe we should just go somewhere else. But one of the people I was with was like, no, I'm going to turn her day around. He said, I'm going to force her to be happy. And I was like, okay, whatever. So she goes, she gets our drinks, she comes back out with our drinks. And sure enough, one of the people I was with, he's like, I forgot what her name was, but he used her name. He's like, Samantha, how's your day going? And she looked at him like, I do not like you. Like you could tell she was just so pissed. It was like she wanted to take the drink and just pour it on top of his head. She gave him the worst glare and she said, not good. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What's going on? And she was like, well, I've been here all day. And he was like, ah, I hate that. He's like, you working a double? And she's like, yeah, I've already worked a double. And then the person that I was supposed to have cover for me, they just called in sick. So now I'm going to have to work even longer until we find somebody. And he looked at her and he's like, man, that's tough. Like, that's got to be tough. What were you going to do tonight? And he just started asking her questions about her and just validating the fact that like what she was feeling was real. And, she didn't need to have shame for feeling that way. It was a valid emotion that she was dealing with. And he was like, what if I told you that I'm going to give you a huge tip tonight? And she kind of smiled and he's like, I'll be sure to do that because you deserve it. And it was almost like it turned her whole day around, just that he was able to validate that what she was going through sucked. And then he took it a step further and he gave her something to look forward to. So he was like, I'm going to give you a big tip. How would that make you feel? She's like, great. He's like, yeah, then it would make it worth all the hours that you've put in and whatever. And I can't remember exactly what he did from there, but the point here is that he took the time to not allow her to be in that negative mind space any longer, simply by asking her how her day's going. Then she was kind of rude back and he kept going. He didn't allow her rudeness to turn him bitter and to make him be rude. He just continued to pour kindness and happiness back into her. And eventually she picked up on it and her mood was turned around. And it was in this moment that I was like, wow, like actually taking the time to ask people about themselves and to make them feel valid and to just bring them up from the negativity that they're experiencing. Sometimes that's all it takes. And so be nice to people, no matter what the situation is. And I promise you, it's going to make your life much better along the way. And that is my final lesson for you. I hope that y'all enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully it's going to inspire you to change your mindset on at least a couple of these things that I talked about. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can either send me a DM or you can go leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. I would absolutely love that. I think sometimes that people think you have to write this like long, drawn out review if you're going to leave one at all. But literally, you could just write like a lesson that you wish you would have known sooner. It doesn't have to be something sappy or anything like that. It can be super, super simple. But those reviews and those ratings are what's going to continue to push the podcast forward and allow it to reach new listeners and just allow us to keep growing together one conversation at a time. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate it. And I will talk to all of y'all again next Monday.